Hey gamers, Foxfire's here, and today I wanted to bring you a fun holiday guide video for Quest 2 multiplayer VR games. And so I guess first, I really feel like I need to start with the Quest 2 itself. There's even so many of my friends still that, I talk to them about VR gaming and they feel like they need to have some kind of a expensive gaming PC or some kind of expensive graphics card set up in order to play VR. And the Quest 2 kind of came out and knocked all of that, just out of the park. You don't need a fancy computer. The Quest 2 is an all-in-one headset. It does everything itself internally. And so it's been fantastic for VR gaming and revolutionizing it because it finally is a headset that is going to be available to the majority of people quite easily. And Oculus has done a really good job keeping the price range of it much more inexpensive compared to the gaming headsets historically for VR. And so to kind of put it, I guess a number on it, a lot of the expensive gaming headsets used to, and some of the models still very much do cost, about $1,000 or £1,000. And so with that kind of price range, you can imagine that it locked out a lot of players. And so the Oculus Quest 2 has come out, and the base model for it is $299, so a fraction of the cost of the historical cost of a lot of these, high-end gaming headsets. And you might think, oh, well, is it really going to be that great then if it's $299 versus, so many of these other headsets costing $1,000? And the answer is yes. So it's absolutely fantastic. The Quest 2 can handle graphics just fine. There's a lot of really fantastic games that I'm really excited to talk to you guys about. The other thing I wanted to mention is, this is a guide. This is a guide specifically for multiplayer games. And you might think, well, why is there such a focus on multiplayer? And actually that's for a few reasons. One, when I do gaming personally, what I really enjoy is the social aspect of it. And so when I game, I want to have, that social social interaction. I want to do a multiplayer game. I'm usually even a fan particularly of cooperative games. And the other reason that I wanted to do a multiplayer guide is actually within the Oculus store, there's not an easy way that I've found to filter specifically for multiplayer games. So I oftentimes spend loads of time having to just type in various keywords, looking specifically through a ton of different hits, trying to pick out multiplayer games. I hope that in the future it's easier to navigate to look at just multiplayer games, but for now, you kind of have to rely on other guides. And so when you Google this, multiplayer VR games, one of the things that I found is that a lot of the hits are really outdated. And they also only have a few games mentioned. And so what I wanted to do with this video is mention, one, my favorites, as well as also at the end, put a big long list of all the other multiplayer games that are available, just because it does take so much time to troll through and find these different multiplayer games, and they're not available listed in a lot of the different guides. So I hope you find that interesting and are able to, get some use out of it, because of course your tastes in gaming are going to be, maybe have some overlap with mine, but you're going to be interested in a different variety of things as well. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention was what makes a good VR game, because if I start talking about particular titles and your favorite VR game doesn't get mentioned, I can just imagine the onslaught in the comments of how could you not mention game X? And so I wanted to address up front that for me, my taste in gaming, it's absolutely a must that the game be have teleport movement as opposed to just smooth movement as an option. If you're not that familiar with VR, motion sickness is a really big issue in VR, even if you're not a person that typically gets motion sick, like airplanes fine, cars fine. One of the things that you'll find is that you jump into a headset and you do some of these motion intense labeled games, and you'll probably have to stop after like 2 minutes. And if you don't believe me, just check out the comments on any one of these games that has intense motion label in the comments, and that comment section will be full of could not play. um So teleport movement is a must for me from a motion sickness standpoint, and I really wish it weren't that way, because it does lock me out of a lot of games. And so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to list the top 5 motion friendly games, and then I'm also going to list the top 5 not as motion friendly games for those of you who don't have that kind of restriction. The other thing that I just wanted to touch on very briefly is what's also important when you're picking out this game, either for yourself or to give as a gift, is not just the teleport movement option, but it's also the gameplay and the interface as well, which is one of the reasons why a guide is really important. Because while you might be able to see in the Oculus store that a game is labeled as motion comfort friendly, comfortable setting, it obviously wouldn't necessarily have any kind of ratings for how smooth the gameplay is or how smooth the interface is. And so those are actually really big considerations, because in terms of motion sickness, those are the other things that can really mess with you very quickly. And so to kind of give an example, um, when I talk about smooth gameplay, oftentimes when you're in, I guess, a poorly made game, there can be a lot of jerky and stutteriness of the game itself, or not even the whole game, but like some aspect, like some particular mob will jerk, or the interface itself will jerk, or your hand. So for hand tracking, for hand movement kinds of things, you'll be looking at your hand in VR, and there's like a huge lag with what your hand is doing, or your hand will be in a different position than what your hand is in real life. And that is the kind of thing, that clunkiness, that can really mess with you in terms of a motion sickness kind of a way. So yeah, if you know that you've got motion sickness, or you think that the person that you'd like to give a gift to is going to have motion sickness, I would highly recommend looking first into what people might have to say about how smooth the gameplay is in the interface. All right, so let's get to it. The top 5 multiplayer games for teleport movement, or no movement even for some of these games, so motion friendly games. Starting off, I'd say number 5 is Catan, Settlers of Catan. This is a classic board game. And so again, jumping straight into the whole like different tastes, board games may not be your style, especially when you're talking about VR. But for me, especially during the pandemic, I am a board game geek. I love Settlers of Catan, and to be able to play this in VR is so much better than even playing like a digital version, say on PC, like Catan Universe through Steam, for example. And the reason for that is because with Catan VR, it throws your avatars in there together. You have a physical table space that's 3 dimensional. You're interacting with these different things, in the interface menu, but it's just that physical presence makes it feel real. So rather than just talking to your friends in a 2D environment or something, it feels like you're actually there with your friends in much more of a real kind of a way. And so I really appreciate that, again, especially during the pandemic. I love Catan, and so I would definitely rate this in my top 5. Number 4, Drop Dead. So this is a fun zombie shooter that is fun either as a single player solo or as multiplayer. So the multiplayer part of it is, I guess, a zombie horde wave shoot 'em up. And so there are different kind of wave maps, and it's an insane intense, as you go through the higher end waves, more and more zombies are coming at you, and there are different kinds of weapons that you can get. Some of them are melee, some of them are different types of guns, and so I would highly recommend this. This is a lot of fun to play with a friend, especially cooperatively, in terms of what wave can you guys get to together, but also even slightly competitive, because each player is given a score at the end, and so you can see how well you did compared to your friends, and so that's a fun aspect of it too. The solo play of it is a really nice story kind of campaign, and I would definitely recommend the single player mode for that. Number 3, Demeo. I really love Demeo. Demeo is kind of like a tabletop D&D, but in VR. So imagine if you had a D&D map, um, and it was just three-dimensional, and you could go and explore different rooms, and as you explore into them, they, you know, they reveal themselves. You can then, once you get close enough, you can see the features in the room and the monsters in the room, etc. And so this has got, you know, the kinds of classes that you expect from D&D. So it's things like there's this warrior paladin kind of a class, the Guardian. It's called the Guardian. There's a mage sorcerer. There is an assassin kind of a character. And they've recently introduced, with the latest map that just came out, the recent update, also the bard class. And then, of course, in the original lineup too, as I'm thinking about it, there is a hunter, which I call it hunter. It's a ranger. The ranger class, as you can imagine, kind of an elven bow ranged kind of damage. And so the way that this kind of works is similar to D&D, how you have access to different abilities. Demeo works in that you have a few cards in your hand, and you gain additional cards, additional abilities as you play the game. And so then you can use these different cards and use these different abilities to overcome different challenges and different monsters that, you know, come at you. And some of it, as in D&D, they're going to be, you know, easy challenges, just regular kinds of monsters. But then there are going to be really heavy, hard-hitting monsters like trolls and gorgons and, you know, all the kinds of things that you typically think of, you know, a high fantasy kind of medievally game. I would highly recommend Demeo, especially if you like RPG games that are kind of like D&D style. Number 2, Orbus. I have probably spent more time in Orbus than any other VR game. Orbus is the first MMORPG in VR, and if you've seen the videos on this channel, you know I'm a big MMO fan. And so, of course, I had to play the first MMO for VR. And it started off, you know, as you can imagine, quite small, pioneering a lot of new things, being the first VR MMO. And not just the first VR MMO, but in a space and in a time when there were almost no multiplayer games available at all. And the fact that they made this, you know, cross-platform was fantastic, because again, this also came out in a time when there were almost no cross-platform kinds of games. And so that it was able to throw everybody in there together was fantastic. And as you can imagine, with most MMOs like WoW, for example, or ESO, you have these very kind of high fantasy kinds of classes. You have the warrior class, you have a paladin, you have the wizard, sorcerer, mage class. You also have the ranger class, and the musketeer. So the healing classes are musketeer and bard. And I actually play musketeer as my main in Orbus, and I absolutely love it. It is, in my opinion, the funnest class to play. And so just taking a step back and broadening it back out to Orbus in general. If you've ever liked playing MMOs and RPGs, or if the person you want to gift it to, this is definitely your go-to game. There are no other titles on the market right now for this. There have been several that have been planned. They've been delayed due to, well, MMOs always get delayed, but the pandemic certainly didn't help, and so none of the other MMOs are still out. One of them was slotted to still come out by the end of the year. I think it was Zenith, or maybe I'm misremembering which one was coming out by the end of the year, but it still hasn't come out. Orbus is still like the go-to. The graphic style is kind of old school, kind of cartoony. It's very cartoony. And so the graphic style puts some people off, but it's something that definitely grows on you and is quite fun. And some of the transmogs in the game are a lot of fun too, because, you know, you can put together like a penguin set and run around, you know, looking like a penguin for Christmas. It's a lot of fun. I'd also say, like, one of my favorite things about Orbis is the co-op dungeons. So again, like as you find in many MMORPGs, you have a 5-man dungeon. There are raids for larger groups as well. And so just, you know, having some fun with your friends, it's fun to go into one of these 5-man dungeons. And you don't have to have 5 people to do it. One of the things that me and my friends have had a lot of fun with is trying to do it with 3 and 4 players, and that's totally doable. It just makes it a bit of an extra challenge. Number 1, Acron. So Acron is a bit different than the other multiplayer games in that um, you are the only one in the headset. Everyone else, your other friends, are using a phone app, the Acron phone app. And the way this fun game works is they're squirrels, you're an oak tree, you've got some acorns, and each one of these acorns kind of spawns over a period of time. And their goal is kind of like capture the flag for VR. Their goal is to run up to you, steal an acorn, and get it back to their base in order to score a point. And they have to score all 4 acorns in order to win the game within, the time frame. Each one of these matches is only a few minutes, and it is absolutely hilarious because as they're running in, trying to steal these acorns, you, the tree, the person who's in VR, can pick up the squirrels, toss them. You can chuck these like giant plant balls at them, and so that knocks them out, makes them have to respawn at their base, and it is a ton of fun. I can't even begin to describe how many countless hours of fun I have had playing Acron. So each one of the squirrels too, there are different, I guess each different squirrel has a different ability, and so you can choose like which squirrel that you want to play as. And so some of them are tunnelers, and so they're really good about being able to get right up, dig a tunnel, get right up to you, snag an acorn, and go back through that tunnel and try and get a head start back to the base. There's a speedy squirrel, and it can, kind of try and get close-ish, pop its speed boost, zoom on in, grab it, and zoom out. And the idea is, of course, they're trying to pull off these different ability tricks so that you don't just easily snap a plant ball at them and make them respawn. And then, so what else? There's the bridge squirrel, so that you can build bridges up into the air. And so for some of the different maps that they have, that's really important because some of the maps have, these like deep canyons that if you fall into them, you just immediately have to respawn. And there are also, maps where it's useful to kind of try to get above the tree and then drop down. So there are all kinds of different strategies, and it's a lot of fun. So different people, find different play styles, different squirrels that they like, together cooperatively working together as a team. One person will be the tunneler, one person will be the zoom, and so together they'll try and get those acorns back to the base. And you as the tree. Both roles are fun, squirrel and tree. You as the tree have a lot of fun just attacking the squirrels. Okay, so a bonus. That is actually kind of tied for first. It's a game called After the Fall. It just came out, and it is specifically for Quest 2, not Quest 1. So if you are a player that has a Quest 1, do pay attention to what Quest games a given title will support, because some of the new games coming out don't support the original Quest, and so you can see that the Quest is getting phased out. It's not clear at the moment how long it will take for the Quest to be phased out altogether, but so definitely with big title games like After the Fall, you're going to start to see that shift. So it is a fantastic game for Quest 2. It is from the makers of Arizona Sunshine. So if you know anything about, the history of, VR, Arizona Sunshine originally was like one of the absolute best titles available. It was a ton of fun in solo campaign mode. It's a zombie kind of a shooter. You play a character who is kind of out in the wilderness, just kind of surviving and getting by, and you hear this radio message that there are other people, and you spend the game trying to find your way to find these other people. So yeah, no spoilers, but it is a lot of fun. It's a great story as you go through, and it also is it was one of the very only few games that you could play with two players in campaign mode, so that you and a friend could actually do the campaign mode. It's also got a multiplayer mode that goes up to 4, and again, it's a zombie wave horde kind of shoot 'em up there, where you together are around, like, you know, kind of like a little encampment, a little tent with some ammunition, and you're kind of guarding different directions as zombies come at you from all sides, and so you just fight progressively more difficult waves. One of the things I will say about Arizona Sunshine is that it hasn't aged well. Arizona Sunshine is one of those games that it has a clunky gameplay at times. It's got the teleport movement, which is great, but the clunky gameplay at times, especially during the Horde Wave shoot 'em up, well, the multiplayer with 4, there'll be a lot of jerking around, and so one of the things that's definitely true is I can't play that game as long as some of the other titles. So it hasn't aged well in that regard, just because so many of the games are good with smooth gameplay and smooth interface now. So After the Fall was made by the same creators as Arizona Sunshine, and effectively you could kind of think of this as Arizona Sunshine, but remade for the updated, you know, capabilities for Quest 2 graphics, you know, additional kind of monster play. It's fantastic. I would definitely put this as tied for first. And one more bonus game would be Skyworld Kingdom Brawl. So I like deck building games like Magic the Gathering. I used to play Hearthstone back in the day, and so I really enjoy kind of a deck building strategy kind of a game. And Skyworld Kingdom Brawl is really fun for VR because it's got a bit of that, you know, deck strategy, but then it puts it, you know, on this 3D kind of a tabletop against your opponent, where you are, you know, spawning dragons and trying to push lanes to destroy your enemy's towers and castle before they destroy yours. And so it's just a lot of fun to see those dragons come to life three-dimensionally. It's a lot of fun to come up with the different kinds of units and try to push those different lanes in different ways. And so I really appreciate, you know, a good fun strategy game like that. So I couldn't leave that off of the top hit list. Okay, so let's talk about smooth movement games. So again, I can't play these games for very long at all without, you know, feeling unwell. Uh, so hopefully you won't have that kind of restriction. And so I would give some top games that I would recommend for that. These are games that I've been able to play again, not for extended periods of time in one sitting, but that I have, you know, tried to play a bit as I'm able. And so number 5, I would say Battle Sisters. So this is from the Warhammer 40k universe. So if you are a Warhammer 40k fan, this is definitely a title that you want to pick up. Again, unfortunately for me, the movement in the game, I just wasn't able to play it very well. Number 4, Death Horizon. So this is one of the games that, again, multiplayer, you can go in with a friend. This is a zombie, but kind of like a futuristic space zombie kind of a shooter in a way. So there's kind of advanced technology, and it's got a very futuristic sci-fi feel to it. And so you are working together with your friend to, yeah, make your way through this labyrinth of zombies. It's a lot of fun because the zombies can sneak up on you from different directions. And so if you're also a fan of like horror games or, you know, kinds of scare games, you'll definitely get that vibe. I would highly recommend this game for that. The one thing I will say about Death Horizon is it's got a bit of that clunky interface, clunky gameplay to it, so it's not that easy on the motion side of it as well for those reasons. Number 3, Population 1. Of course, this is definitely one of the most popular VR titles at the moment. It's like Fortnite for VR, and so if you're familiar with gaming, you know how popular Fortnite is. And so imagine just taking Fortnite into VR, and that is what Population 1 is. And that's why it's so popular and so successful in VR. It is far too motion intense for me. I can play 1, 2 matches at most before having to just take the headset off and sit down for a good while. It is a lot of fun for what it is. One of the things I would also say is it's definitely got a learning curve. If you go in there and you're not of the mindset to be patient and learn how to play the game, you will just, most people are going to go in there and they're just going to get stomped the first several games that they play. And so I would definitely recommend having a good look at some strategy guides for this game if you pick it up to help you with that learning curve a bit so that you spend less time just getting stomped. So you come in kind of like as a gliding paratrooper kind of a way over the city. You choose, how you want to glide down, where you want to glide down. So there are strategic points tied with that, as well as, item drops and all kinds of things that come into it as you kind of imagine from these survivor kinds of games. Number two, Larcenauts. So this is a new one, and it's kind of like Team Fortress 2 for VR. So again, another really popular 2D game, Team Fortress 2. It made perfect sense that somebody made a flavor of that for VR. And so it's going to be really incredibly popular, I think, as well. So Larcenauts, I would say one of the things to keep in mind about Larcenauts is they've got to do a fair bit of work about class balance. Class balance has been an issue in the game. A lot of players have complained about it. They've made some steps to try to work on that a bit, and so hopefully, it'll be one of those things that can really take off as they address things like class balance, as they address things like having access to the various different heroes. So they had also changed it for a bit. So initially, they had different classes open, etc. But then there was an update, and then it was much more expensive to be able to unlock some of the heroes. And so there was huge kind of a backlash against that decision, and so that's something they've been trying to walk back from a bit. So the game's definitely got some issues to work out, but in terms of a Team Fortress kind of a heroes game. Each hero's got, a little bit different of flavor, a different play style. You're familiar with Team Fortress 2. Larcenauts, again, is definitely the one and only title right now available for Quest 2 that you could pick up. And so I would recommend picking it up for that. And number one, Echo VR. This is kind of a classic. This is, zero-G competitive gaming. If you've ever read the sci-fi novel or seen the movie adaptation for Ender's Game, yeah, you can kind of imagine this as Ender's Game for VR. You're going in there having these competitive zero-G kinds of games.
Stakes get higher.
And of course, I have to mention as a bonus, the military sims. There's a lot of people that love military sims like Call of Duty, etc. And so I couldn't just not mention that there are some military sims for VR. One of the most popular ones probably is Onward. I tried Onward very early on, I think back when it was still in beta and back on the old Rift, so before the Quest, the Rift. And I have to say, again, I just couldn't play this game because of the movement issues. I appreciate that a military sim needs to do smooth movement, or feels like it needs to do smooth movement for the kind of realistic immersion side of it and for the player versus player side of it, given the kind of game that it is. But because of that choice, it just means it's a game that I can't really play. And so it was bad for me from a motion sickness standpoint. But Onward, being a military sim, a lot of people really love those. The different types of realistic model weapons, the different kinds of tactics that you can have on different maps to try to, eliminate the enemy team. And so, yeah, Onward also had some issues early on about really clunky, jerky gameplay and interface. I mean, some of the things back when I tested it in the beta, they were just broken. Like the tutorial. The tutorial itself was just broken. It didn't work, and then you were just trapped in the tutorial and couldn't get out. And so I'm sure they fixed that since, so it probably won't be an issue. That's kind of one of the things that you'll run into if you play some of the betas for these games. It's just there's a lot that still hasn't quite been worked out. So military sim, because of the smooth movement, no teleport movement, just not for me, but definitely worth mentioning for those of you who love military sims and those of you who are not bothered by motion sickness. And there's a couple of other titles similar to it, similar to Onward, that are also military sims. There's one, I think it's called Contractors, and there's a couple of them out now. There's a few military sims, so have a look at that if you like them, and yeah, enjoy playing those. The other one that I wanted to mention for a bonus game is Swords of Gargantua. And so Swords of Gargantua, I wanted to mention because it's kind of different than other VR games that I've seen. Imagine that you're going into like a giant tower of just dungeon levels. And so you work your way up the tower to harder and harder levels of difficulty. And so this is something that you can do with friends. It is a game that when I was playing it was completely melee. They were planning on introducing a ranged class. I'm actually not sure if they have introduced a ranged class because this is one of those that, again, having no teleport movement, only smooth movement was available. I couldn't play it for very long without feeling unwell. But so it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like a Japanese kind of feudalistic atmosphere, kind of a themed game in terms of the kinds of weapons, in terms of the kinds of monsters. And so it's a lot of fun in that regard. You're kind of like samurai going in to fight as a team to work your way up this dungeon tower. And as you do, you collect new gear on each dungeon run to level up your character, to upgrade your character. And so it was kind of fun in that regard too, as kind of an RPG, the choice of weapon style and the choice of upgrades that you go for. Okay, and there are so many more games that I wanted to mention for multiplayer. Again, it's really hard to find a full list of all of these, and so it's taken me a while to put this together, and so I hope you find this is useful. There's so many other things. So there are other kinds of board games. There are, golfing games. There are drunken bar fight games. There are arcade kinds of style games, puzzle kinds of games. Uh, and then, of course, even beyond like just multiplayer gaming, there are a ton of multiplayer, I guess, cooperative kinds of experiences that are more targeted for even like workplace. So there are a lot of like workspace kinds of games where you can come in and have a meeting. And so, yeah, overall, there are a ton of really cool games, even or experiences that you can just, go to a really cool, beach setting or something and have a chat with someone. It's a good way to connect with people who, during the pandemic, you might be on the other side of the world from them or in a completely different country and unable to travel home for the holidays. And so it can be a fun way to still stay connected. And I think, again, that's one of the reasons that I'm really drawn to VR gaming. It's not just, the frontier of gaming. It's also that, added experience of realism, that added immersion that I've always loved about games. And so, yeah, VR, highly recommend it. Quest 2, check out all of these other titles. Have a look, see what you like, and I'd like to hear too what your favorite games are. I'm kind of curious how much of an overlap my tastes are with yours, and also if there are different games that I haven't played, like Carly and the Reaper Man. So that's a game that I've thought about picking up for a while and just haven't had a chance to do that yet. So there are definitely other cool looking titles out there. Yeah, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, like, subscribe. Would love to hear more from you. Thanks. As always, thanks for watching, gamers. I'm Foxfires, and this has been a fun holiday guide for Quest 2 multiplayer VR gaming.